Hi everyone, you're listening to the Magic Hour. Today we're talking about chakra balancing, self-fulfilling prophecies, and energy healing with the divine Shakeinah Davis. She hosts a whole slew of magical events focused on moon magic, intuition development, and herbal illuminations. Ninah Davis is here to spill her secrets on chakra balancing, self-loveology, and her intuitive practice. Let's make some magic. Hey everybody, Shereen here. Welcome to the Magic Hour. If this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. The Magic Hour drops every Sunday for your enjoyment, and show notes are found over at mylittlemagicshop.com, our official sponsor. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed, Spotify, or iTunes. You can also follow me on Instagram at mylittlemagicshop and Facebook. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get to the show. Our guest today is energy healer, intuitive, and master of self-fulfilling prophecies, Ninah Davis. Welcome, Ninah. I'm so excited to have you as a guest.
Hi, Shereen. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, Mercury retrograde definitely caught us, made this a little bit more difficult to schedule than usual. So I'm super excited to finally get it done and to be here with you. So let's start from the beginning. I read that you're the daughter of a pastor. Can you tell me a little bit about what this was like for you growing up?
Oh, the fun parts of my life. Yes. I'm pretty much a pew baby, or what people call a pew baby. You were born and raised in the church. My grandfather even sang with me in the choir, holding me in his arms. My grandmother was a singer, and so was my grandfather. My grandfather was a part of this quartet that traveled and sang. My mom, we were Jehovah's Witnesses for a short time, Pentecostal, Apostolic, Church of God in Christ, non-denominational, and a gamut of things in between. Mother began to preach as I was entering my teenagehood. So that was quite a bit of change from just kind of going here and there everywhere to hitting puberty. And now your mom is a preacher, and then she becomes a pastor. And you know, the rumors about PKs, the pastor's kids, they are not all true. They are not. But I was the child that could toe the line very, very closely and make it home in time for the police to call. I pretend to be my mom and get myself out of trouble. Sorry, mama. I grew up in a very religious household. It was a household that I believe sought to follow religious tenets and the dogma as pure as possible. But I also believe that it was imbalanced just to our basic humanity and our biological needs that were not necessarily talked about or met. So I grew up in a house where we could talk about all things God and all things sinner and all things Satan, but not all things, hey, you're going to hit puberty one day. You're going to enter into a relationship one day, and we want to make sure that that's a healthy relationship. And when I began to look for these things to be reflected back to me in the various holy books that I began to read, both in church and on my own, I realized that there was this great gap when it came to women and women's lives and what happens to a woman biologically that wasn't a sin. So in the beginning, I was pretty much the odd man out. I was born into a family where my great grandmother, and my mother are all Virgos.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Earthy, mutable Virgos, and here comes this Pisces child who is quite the opposite, pretty much in every way. Character building exercise, I should say, my childhood. And if your listeners notice, I have a Mercury in Pisces along with my sun. So I may sound like I'm speaking backwards in a sense, but I promise you'll get it in the end. I'll always wrap it up. But that's pretty much the beginning. I have a lot of siblings, but we were kind of separated, and I did my best to keep us together. I was always the one, come on, family, unconditional love, forgiveness is necessary. And as we all know, Virgos can be the queens and kings of petty.
Yeah.
I crown you. It's not Leo. Leo, you can't be the king and queen of everything. It is the Virgos who are the kings and queens of petty, and Sagittarians are the kings and queens of undercutting. So there's a difference. So I had to navigate a lot of what was petty versus what could be high minded. A lot of, what was, can we separate Satan from our decisions? can we separate God from some of our decisions? So I had a childhood where, because of the religious restrictions, I sought to circumnavigate that and get a clearer, more whole, complete story.
I really, really love that because you brought up so many fantastic and beautiful points or just experiences, especially, when it comes to, growing up in the church and kind of understanding where you fit in, especially as a woman, because, there are not that many stories out there that are really super uplifting for women unless you go out and like actively, search for them and tend to play more of this supporter, like secondary character role in a lot of major religions. And I find that whole topic incredibly interesting. I guess I wanted to also ask, before we dig a little bit deeper into your this religious kind of foundation that you were established. What about your dad? Like you mentioned you mentioned all these strong, like matriarchal figures in your life. So I wanted to understand a little bit more about, what the masculine energy was doing.
Or what it wasn't.
Yeah.
My father is a Libra, beautiful man, very smart, and he also has, I believe, he has his doctorate in divinity. So, or master's in divinity, something like that. So, church has just always been a part of our lives, following the word. And
Mhm.
my father has been a career police officer, and he's held various positions, including chief of police. And I remember growing up, my father never whooped us. He never whipped me, for sure. Even though I was strived to be a goody two shoes, he could say one word that would stop me in my tracks.
Mhm.
And his nickname for me, he would say my nickname that he had for me, and he would look at me. And my father's very tall. I just barely made it to 5'3". So it was a very tall man to look up to.
Mhm.
And he would say my nickname, and he would say, behave. That was the worst whipping I could ever get in my life.
Yeah.
He had to change his tone and his stance to get my attention. And I knew I was immediately out of pocket.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a reprimand that made me feel guilty immediately or shameful for my behavior.
Mhm.
It more so taught me, get yourself in check. You're in control of yourself.
Yeah.
And I remember asking him the same question my children asked me later on. Dad, am I being Have? Am I being, because you want to be what your parents, ask you to be.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
wanted to know if I was being Have.
Yeah.
So that pretty much led, the masculine part of my childhood in regards to my father
Mhm.
was, you just make sure you are on your best behavior. You make sure
Mhm.
you do well in school. Don't let your good be evil spoken of. Both my mom and my father both imparted that on me in their own ways.
Mhm.
So I was always struggling to be this oldest child, but also the girl. So there was no protection over me in the form of a big brother,
Mhm.
because my big brother, he was born blind and with cerebral palsy and some
Mhm.
other things. So that's my big baby. He was
Mhm.
my baby. So I didn't have this cover of protection because my father was out protecting other people.
Mhm.
And my mother, this amazing Virgo who served very well, was an advocate for women who experienced domestic violence and children who had special needs, especially on the autism spectrum. So my mother was actually serving in her capacity and her purpose,
Mhm.
but it was pretty lonely because my mom was really the authoritarian in our home. And
Mhm.
father, he was like the very last step if you could reach him in time. So I had to learn how to quickly decipher good from evil. Is this good because God says it's good?
Mhm.
Is it bad because the devil says it's bad or God says it's bad?
Mhm.
And then my parents came under that, and then the church was
Mhm.
there as well. And so I think the balance for me as far as masculinity and being able to reach something constant to get masculine feedback was my grandfather. So
Okay.
the one who held me in his arms in church, he was the older, more settled man in the house and would give great wisdom. My grandfather, they called him the walking Bible. He could say Matthew 6 and he would tell you the scripture and the meaning behind it.
Yeah.
But he was also the first man I got to see cry, and cry not just in religious ceremony or anything like that, but he said, no, Jesus wept. So we're supposed to weep. We have to let it out.
Yeah.
And that was one of my favorite things, that I got to see my father be this super tough guy in his profession,
Mhm.
but my grandfather to show me the softer side and the more settled He was my settled constant in my life. But I really didn't get a lot of masculine authority in my life. So I had to pick that up myself.
So fascinating. It's so interesting because it's like there's so many different, things that I'm sure contributed to from your childhood that really contributed to, who you are as a person. Like you grew up in this very strong, religious household that has very stringent, ideas or thoughts, about what it means to be good, what it means to be quote unquote bad. And then also, like understanding the dynamics of relationships, so like what relationships look like, what does a healthy relationship look like, and kind of really trying to truly understand what that means, which I feel like is a very, common story, something that a lot of people have to really have to work through, maybe not with that extra layer of, the church's input, especially when you're, so front and forward in everyone's eyes, being the daughter of a pastor. Do you think that growing up in such a religious household really sparked your interest in spirituality, or like really like kind of led to you being interested in things outside of the traditional, foundation that you grew up under?
I think the latter is more important. So sometimes I will sit and ponder, did I choose a family
Mhm.
that would give me the vocabulary and the vernacular to navigate my purpose when I grew
Mhm.
up?
Mhm.
Or was I just strictly shaped once I was born,
Mhm.
and experienced the different religions? But I personally believe that, at least as of this moment, because my beliefs do shift as I learn more, but I believe that we choose our families. And I believe I chose my family in order to push my purpose forward. The vocabulary that I did need to navigate it had to be a type of esoteric vocabulary. Now, it's exoteric on the surface because most people know, you read the Bible, God created the world, or some source created the world, and we're supposed to strive for moral greatness.
Mhm.
But on the other end, the esoteric part, the parts that are underneath the surface, I think came forth. I remember being 3. Since the age of 3, I can remember every single dream I have ever had.
Wow. I'm
Crap.
like, I can't even remember dreams I had 2 days ago. So that is a gift.
Such a weird gift for me because I can't remember anything in my, like, I need all kinds of calendars and I need to write stuff on my hand sometimes to make sure that I'm focused. But my dream world is completely different. It's very organized. I think that's
Mhm.
where my Virgo plays on that end. And I have a stellium in Virgo. I have Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn in Virgo in the 8th house. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Retrograde. So my dreams definitely work for me and they're very organized. But real life, that's a different story.
Yeah. Wait,
But
and just to clarify for those of you guys that don't know any astrology, so the eighth house really governs the dream world. It governs transformation. It governs death, but not necessarily physical death. Some sorts of like either psychological death or spiritual death. But it's definitely the house of intuition. And so when you have a lot of planets like she has in the eighth house, that tends to make you a little bit more connected with things that are beyond the veil or things that are in the shadow world.
I love your explanation. That was so perfect.
Oh, thank you.
True. And because I have Saturn there, I have to be disciplined in this.
Mm,
So at the age of 3, I remember my dreams. And I remember telling my parents and my grandmother what happened the day I was born. And they were freaking out. They were like,
mm.
that's true, but, and I was saying it was very,
How'd you know that?
yes, it was like, it's very cold. And I'm giving them all these details. And they're going, okay, well, did you all, they were arguing with each other. Who told her? Or somebody told her. And I remember the first spiritual experience I had in my waking moments. My grandmother, ever the Virgo and ever serving, allowed someone to stay in our home temporarily. And she was schizophrenic. And I remember
Mm,
listening to the woman and my grandmother argue. And I ran to my grandmother and I said, Grandma, you have to stop because she's going to jump out of the window. And my
mm,
grandmother said, No, she wouldn't do anything like that. And we just have to pray. And I said, Grandma, she's going to jump out of the window. And I remember placing myself near the window to sit down and watch because I'd seen it happen.
mm.
And at some point, something happened and she ran and jumped out of the window. Thankfully, it was just the second floor. She was okay.
Wow.
But that's when they started to pay attention. And so
Mhm.
if I had a dream or some type of vision, they didn't know what to call it. So my mom took me to our pastor, and my mom said, she's so sensitive and she cries for other people and she cries at the, she's so sensitive. What's going on with my baby? And the pastor said, well, she's a prophet
Mm.
and she cries for other people. She won't cry much when she's older. And it actually is really is true. I probably cry more for other people than I do myself. But at 3, I remember that happening very explicitly. And then the things that I would say afterwards became scary to people. They didn't like it when I would kind of go into that part of the realm.
Mhm.
So I was left to study it for myself at a very early age. And I was a very early reader. I had my library card at 3. I love telling the story of how my mom was like, you're eating my money up with these little golden books. I can't buy anymore, but there's a place for you to
Mm.
read. And I had to sign my name. And that's the first time I began to question, wait a minute, why do I have such a long name? Why is my name Shakeinah? Or sometimes people pronounce it Shakeinah. I have to sign my name. This is a long name. And I remember crying and asking her, why didn't you name me Anne or Mary? And it's like 9 letters. And what does this mean? And when she told me what my name meant, I was upset with her. I immediately knew this is too heavy for a kid. Why would you name someone the divine feminine presence of God sent to dwell? I don't want to dwell here. I don't be like this place. And I would sit on her lap and pinch her face and say, okay, so I really do love you. You're great now, but where's my real mom? I'm not from this planet. Who are my people? I would look for adoption papers as I got older, trying to figure out like, how did I get here? I don't match with these people, but I love them,
Mhm.
but I don't match. I think that was because the family that I chose to be with, my father had to be away just enough for me
Mhm.
to actualize my masculine side. That my mother had to be for the people just enough that it gave me time not to be consistently indoctrinated so
Mhm.
that I could begin to have an objective view instead of a complete subjective view. So even from 3 all the way up until about 10, I had all these crazy mystical experiences in school. I would say, oh, don't go down those stairs. You're going to break your leg because you're going to be playing. Please stop. And
Mhm.
then, of course, it was, you're a witch, you're a warlock, you're a sorcerer, you're the devil, but tell me more. Me, but you're a witch for telling him that that was going to happen to him, but what's going to happen to me? So it was such a really odd childhood to navigate where I would have this really like muggle experience on the surface and behind closed doors. I didn't really have many people to talk to
Mhm.
about the things I was experiencing because they too were afraid to
Mhm.
talk about it. There wasn't an open forum. So until the age of 10, I felt really, really alone, but when I would kind of see other kids or other adults kind of having the same experience, it was like, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm
Yeah.
not, it's okay.
I mean, I think that that's definitely like such an interesting point because I do think that, especially when you grow up in a very traditional religious household, those types of experiences a lot of times there's a stigma attached to them. And I think that that stigma, kind of brings in this sense of fear, which is like hard, as someone, the person going through it, and not knowing how to communicate it in a way that doesn't frighten people, and then trying to understand it on your own. So that's definitely like super super heavy. So you said that these experiences became more and more until you were about 10. So then what happened at around 10 that like did these experiences slow down? Did they stop? Because I know that this is traditionally, I've heard from a lot of folks that around between 10 and like 14, like because they're getting ready to go through puberty, like a lot of times those experiences might shut down because they're not as acceptable in the world. Is that basically what happened to you?
Well, I think from about 10 to 15 is when you're shifting into puberty and then you're kind of getting settled in it. Our intuition is heightened
Hmm.
and we're seeking authenticity. We're seeking, okay, I'm separate from my parents, but I'm still a child. I'm not an adult, but
Hmm.
I also have more responsibility as well. How do I navigate that? And when you can't reach the adults in your life, because usually around that age, the adults are at work, have to be watched as much. So you gain a higher level of independence. And I was a latchkey kid. And I went to a school back in the day. We had off campus lunch for an hour. Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. My 2000 babies, you did not get that level of freedom.
Yeah.
We had an hour that we could go home. We could go to our friends' houses. It didn't matter as long as you made it back into school by 1:15 p.m. At around 10, I remember ending fifth grade thinking something's different, something's changing. And I went to the library and got a copy of Our Bodies, Ourselves. I was telling my mom, like, I think some things are changing and I'm having these feelings. And I remember saying, and I'm discharging. And she went, "Oop, stop. That's too much. No, you're 10. Just be a little girl." And I was a real tomboy. I was just out with the guy. I always had a lot of male friends. For Christmas, she bought me a bra, a training bra. She and my stepfather gave it to me. So it was kind of awkward. And I'll never forget the wrapping paper. It was this gorgeous metallic blue paper. And I'm thinking, yes, it's a book. That's all I wanted was books for Christmas. And I ripped open and it's Playtex training bra. And I'm like, to train. Like, what? Why would you do this in front of him? Oh, And he was so sweet. He was an Aquarius, and I'm an Aquarius rising. So he was like, listen, I didn't know your mom was going to do that. You definitely don't have anything to be trained. Don't worry about it. Wear it later, hide it. It doesn't matter. It's cool. I didn't see it. And so that saved me a lot of embarrassment. But I remember her pulling me in and saying, baby, things are changing. You got to wear a bra or t-shirt. Then I had a boy to tell me, you need to wear a t-shirt because your things are poking out. And it's like, my things? And I kind of shut down, but it was a shutdown into self-study. I was like, okay, this book is saying that these changes are happening. I'm getting hair here and having these different feelings about boys. What's up with that? Mom doesn't want to talk about it. Can't really talk to my grandma about it. So who do I talk to? My mom let me have a phone in my room and I was able to call my granny. And my granny at that point was old enough where she just didn't give a care about what was coming out of her mouth, which I'm just so ready for that. She was like, listen, baby, that's called horny. And I went, oh my God. Oh my God. So I began to study. And at 11, I remember very clearly, Shereen, that something clicked, something changed. I left my homework at home and I was in the beta club. So I was like, I got to make sure my grades are on point. I need to go home and get my homework. I can't miss this assignment. And I remember the adults saying, well, the security guard is always high after the kids start class. And I thought, okay, he won't pay attention. And I was watching my teacher and noticed that she was so into her routine, she didn't see me. So I thought, okay, I'll sneak out. I'll run across the street because we lived down the street from the school. I'll grab my paperwork and come back. I did just that. No one noticed. Happened again. I did just that. No one noticed. And then I realized, wait a minute. Adults don't pay attention to kids unless they need something from them. So I would offer to take attendance so that I could read the lesson plans. I would go home early in the class that I knew the teacher wasn't going to pay attention to me. So I had like an hour and a half between lunchtime and ditching her class to do my homework up for the week. And I would do that like Monday, Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I was at home chilling, but I realized there was no content for kids on television. And I was tired of watching Erica Kane get married over and over again, books. And I started to go and drift into the occult section, the oogity boogity stuff, which I just fell in love with because it answered questions. But one day my mother found my books and I got a really bad whipping for it because it was of the devil. Those are African masks. Those are of the devil. That's from this religion. And then anything that I wanted to do was considered voodoo.
Wow.
These dreams, my intuition started picking up because I realized it was almost like a cloak of invisibility. And then I would try it. Okay, let me see if I could make myself invisible in front of the adults so I can slip up out of here. And that's pretty much what I did. Even through high school, I didn't even realize I was homeschooling myself because school was so boring to me, where I just kept seeing these kids who were supposed to be coming into their own authority continue to be bogged down by the teachers who were their authority figures while they were still simultaneously telling them, but you need to just be yourself and assert some authority. And it was a crazy cycle that I just knew this isn't going to end well, because then the kids who grow up to be adults are then going to oppress more kids. Something has to give. So I began to, between 11 and 15, have these amazing spiritual experiences. I understood that the gift of prophecy or being able to preach or get this divine inspiration from God was the same as someone else in their religion having a dream or a vision or a traumatic experience happen to them that woke them up. By the time I was saying, I think this is the same, we're all seeking the same thing, we just have a different vocabulary and a different
Mhm.
cultural outlook on it.
Mhm.
That's when I was crazy. You get to go to a mental institution because you're wearing all black, you're listening to Sade and smooth jazz, and the other kids are listening to like Tevin Campbell and Jodeci. What's wrong with you, girl? I didn't fit in. I felt way too old,
Yeah.
but in a very, very young body.
That's like incredibly powerful and such a young age to realize, the similarities. And I think that there are so many similarities between all of the world's religions, like between them, but then also between all of the more mystical sectors. And like a lot of people don't sometimes understand that there are mystical sectors within each of the religions. Of course, those mystical sectors tend to be a little bit more guarded. Like Kabbalah, you had to be like a man over a certain age to be able to even access that information. And then there's Sufism within Islam. There's so many different mystical sectors within all of the traditional religions, but a lot for most of history, those particular practices were heavily guarded and limited to certain people. And then the rest of the people were conditioned or taught that, those were not touchable for them. And there was this level of fear. So, like, understanding that as a kid, and then, I'm sure it like was frightening on its own, but then also so frightening for your family members, and tell me a little bit more about like what happens next. This is such a wonderful story. Have understood this. You're wearing black. You're kind of just being really open and trying to learn, and your family's freaked out.
Super freaked out because on top of that, or that was underneath the surface, on top of that, I'm trying to be a teenager to please everyone. And I remember kind of breaking down, realizing, wait a minute, I'm supposed to please God first. And you're telling me I'm supposed to have a personal relationship with him. But when I do, you're telling me that it's wrong. And me questioning God is wrong. Even from 6, I remember being pulled by my ear out of Sunday school because I said, well, there weren't any wells where Jonah was. And if there were, that they wouldn't have eaten him, and I'm talking about digestive juices, and they're like, no kid, this is the story, it's real. So I had to learn how to hold myself in. So by the time I'm a teenager, it's okay, so God, but then also my parents, but the church is kind of between God and my parents. But also my parents, I definitely have to listen to them. And then I have to listen to everybody else in the church and my teachers, and then be a big sister and try to get siblings to listen to me. Who's in charge here? It really was a who's in charge here. That's when I learned that very little, in little small increments, I had to become in charge of whatever life I was going to have. And so at 15, I actually was trying to sign myself up for foster care to get away from my family because I began to understand in small increments what dysfunction was. And I began to see the cycles within my family. And I was like, something's off here. And it may be me, but I think I'm willing to be crazy enough to explore a different side to this. So it was a lot of stuffing of what's happening at school and what's happening in my inner world. And by 17, I remember having this moment of awakening in church. I just directed the choir. We had our church had swelled into a pretty big church, and I was one of the youngest directors there. And I remember sitting down, I'm in my choir robe and I'm ready for the word. And the sun is shining through the stained glass windows and everybody's looking cute. And we're just like ready to worship.
Yeah.
And my pastor starts speaking, and I realized, oh my gosh, he speaks about this like every 3 months. And
Mhm.
then Sister So and so is going to get up and testify that she couldn't pay her rent, but God helped her pay her rent by giving her overtime. And everybody's going to go wild. And then he's going to say this. And this is what's happening in real time. Literally, as I'm thinking it, it's happening.
Mhm.
And I went, oh my gosh. And at one point, he said something. And in my mind, I said, I don't know if I can say it on the show, but I said, bull.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Went, oh, wait a minute. I'm in the choir stand. I'm behind
Uh-huh.
the pastor. I'm about to get struck by lightning. I can't believe I just said that because I didn't really use that language at the time.
Yeah.
I call effervescent language. Add a little spice. Said it again. I said it in my head even louder, and I looked around to make sure that I hadn't said it out loud. And I'm thinking, okay, girl, what's happening here? And then I said, he's going to do this and they're going to do that. They did it. He said something else, and I could feel my lips begin to move this time. And I said, oh no, I have to go. And I said, excuse me. And I dipped out and went downstairs. I took off my robe and I literally ran out of the church to my car and sat it in a thought. If I'm going to explode or be struck by lightning, I need to be in a safe space away from people, because this is sin on sin right here. How could you think those thoughts in church? But then began to realize, wait a minute, you guys keep testifying about the same thing. Why is it that if you can't manifest God paying your rent, why can't you manifest the sustaining of that? How can it be sustained? Why do you have to constantly go back and stress and fear? And I'm a wretch undone and I'm not worthy. But also look at the birds and the lilies of the field. They don't have to look for food. God takes care of them. And it was just kind of, which one is it? And I remember driving off at 17 from church, going home, tossing my Bible, and I was being lied to, but I didn't have anyone to bring that up with. And I think that at some point, the adults in my lives realized that, and there was this convergence. So all of a sudden, there was a prophecy. You're going to be a pastor's wife, and you're going to have 8 children for the Lord. You're not going to go to college. You're just for Christ. You're Christ's bride. No. Because if I know anything about divine inspiration or prophecy or whatever you want to call it, I know that it's just confirmation. And it has not been confirmed in my soul that I'm going to have 8 babies. My mom said, no, that is not the word of the Lord. But I ended up doing just that because I had no one to give me that feedback to affirm what I was going through. I ended up getting married at 19. I had my first child at 20, second at 21, third at 22. And I wanted to get my tubes tied and told a sister at the church who was like a confidant to me. And then a lot of church members showed up and told me that I could not have my tubes tied because that's against God, and I would be silenced in the church and lose my position and all these other things. And I actually had the boldness, or as they call it, the holy boldness, to say, unless Jesus is writing child support checks for the next children that come out of my body, my husband and I's income cannot handle that. I did what you asked me to do. I got married to the only person I've ever slept with, these beautiful children. And there is no me. I did not get a chance to grow into my womanhood. I don't exist. The wife, the mother, the server of Christ and the church, and the person who made her parents proud. That's who exists. But who am I? That started my severance from organized religion, in a sense, was you're going to stop me from saving myself and being able to spend my time with these children. I'm just supposed to keep doing something for your will, but you get to ignore my humanity. I don't think that that's of God, So from 17 to about 22, I started to slowly realize, hey, you have a voice in your life. Well, I don't know what that is yet. I don't know how, but there's something there and we have to find it, because you have to be able to impart that on your children.
Wow, wow, what a powerful story. Okay, so now you're 22. You've decided that, no more children. You've decided that, you need to find yourself. And so what does the next steps look like for you? You start to separate from the church? Like, what happens next?
The next steps, oh my gosh, were a whirlwind, but they were so necessary. So I realized that I was in an abusive relationship. And I remember thinking one day, wow, I think I'm a single mother in a marriage. Is that possible? I think that's possible. I think that you should probably not say those things to me, and I shouldn't feel like crap going to bed and waking up in the morning. I think that when you put your hands on me like that, that's not love. And I remember discussing it with the women in my family in my church, and it was, oh, he just loves you. That's what men do when they love you. I married my high school sweetheart. So even in high school, there were obvious signs that all of the adults they never came to me and said, sweetie, that you shouldn't let him treat you like that. He would pick me up and hold me over the 3rd floor stairs at school and say, unless you kiss me, I'm going to drop you. There's nothing but concrete at the bottom. If he had slipped,
Wow.
terrified, or showing up at my house after midnight or things like that. I didn't know that that was abuse, but I knew something was off. And it wasn't until one night we had a crazy incident. I remember thinking, I don't need to be here anymore. I'm of no good to my kids. Nothing's happening here. I can just leave the planet. and a gun was placed to my head. And I thought, I'm out. Shereen,
Mhm.
I'm out. I'm out. I can't. I'm done. And I remember closing my eyes, waiting to hear the click. And when I heard the click, something changed, and I knew something changed in my aura, in my soul. Like fundamentally, didn't know how to describe it back then, but I would say something across all the timelines that I've ever been a part of. Something shifted. I remember taking a deep breath and opening my eyes, and it was like I saw the world in an entirely new light. And I said, no, I have to live. Who's going to raise these 3 babies with the level of freedom that I know that they can have? Who's going to show them how to get on a plane for the first time? Because my family really didn't fly. Who's going to show them how to leave the country and explore and experience different things?
Mhm.
I'm going to do that.
Mhm.
And I remember getting the phone book, the yellow pages,
Mhm.
and looking up divorce. I'm in the
Mhm.
D section. The first thing I see a lady's picture. I'm calling.
Mhm.
Will understand. And she said, let me ask you 10 questions first. Answer them honestly, and then we can talk about your divorce. Me not knowing any better, I answered the questions honestly. And the last question I remember she asked was, have you ever been strangled? I said, no, of course not. That's like, I would be dead if I was. She said, no. Have you ever been choked? And
Mhm.
before I knew it, I said, well, he's placed his hands around my throat and lifted me off the ground before, but I wouldn't consider that strangling.
Mhm.
And she said, honey, before I can give you any information about this free divorce, you need to go to a domestic violence shelter. You are being abused. You're
Mhm.
being stalked.
Mhm.
She's naming all these things that I have only seen celebrities go through.
Mm.
Like,
Mm.
I'm not famous. I don't have any money. What? It's
Mhm.
just me, like little bitty, shriveled up, short, ugly me. Why, I'm not special. And
Mhm.
she said, like, literally, that's why you need to go. And I talked to my mother about it. And she said, well, remember what happened when we tried to go to a shelter when you were younger?
Mhm.
We went to a shelter to escape abuse, but when they were showing me the room while my mother was filling out paperwork in
Mhm.
the shelter, my mom walked in and the nun walked into the priest pulling off my shirt to molest me.
Oh my God.
That
Yeah.
shut her down because we were coming from me being molested as well, not by my
Yeah.
father. I have to make
Yeah.
that and so that just closed her off. And I said, no, I have to get away. I just need some, I have to get away. This is
Mhm.
crazy. And you guys are still letting this go on. He put a
Mhm.
gun up to my head. He pulled the trigger. And you're saying, but he didn't kill you.
Mhm.
So I left with my children. I went to this shelter that was very scary, where
Mhm.
people were supposed to do me wrong and steal all my stuff and harm me. But it was the one place of refuge that actually taught me what to look for, what misuse was, and how misuse becomes mistreatment, and how
Mhm.
mistreatment becomes abuse, and how that
Mhm.
cycle continues. And so I ended up in several shelters, and I would come back, and it's true, the statistics are true. It takes a person, not just a woman, but a person who's in an abusive relationship many times to actually leave the relationship. You're really not leaving the relationship, you're leaving the parts of yourself that accepted the mistreatment, misuse, and abuse.
Mhm.
You're leaving because you can get that behavior from anyone, but until you choose not to, it's
Mhm.
going to continue to happen. So I
Mhm.
had to separate me being the wife, mother of this man's children, us being high school sweethearts and knowing each other for so long from, but my love, you were never able to shore yourself up with your sense of value and
Mhm.
your worth. You were always taught to be subservient to your partner and everyone else. How
Mhm.
can you begin to serve yourself? Those were the questions that I was given to answer when I would have to go to a shelter and take my babies with me. However, it also gave me an objective view that I would not have had, where my family was telling me, stay with him until your son goes to kindergarten, then you can work 2 jobs and move and get your own place. You're literally setting me up for a stressed out life. And it doesn't solve the abuse and
Mhm.
why it continues to happen. So I woke up one morning to no coat, no cell phone. My car had been towed in the middle of the night, and he had burned a lot of my items. I didn't have anything, literally nothing. I started all the way over. Pluto said, hey, love, let's do slider. We're torching your life.
Mhm.
And within the time of me going to the shelter, it was March 2004. I just turned 24.
Mhm.
And March of 2005, I began to learn how to trust myself. I sat down and I wrote on a piece of legal pad 10 things I wanted for myself. And I'd never done that before, and it was so scary. I remember sweating so hard the pen slipped out of my hand a couple of times because I had to talk about me and my desires. Who does that? I'm just
Mhm.
here for God. I remember I said, I want my own cell phone. I want my own apartment. I want to be a police dispatcher. I want, my children to go to a great Montessori daycare, blah, 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 blah. And I
Mhm.
want a chocolate couch. That was the last one I added. I didn't like chocolate couches. This beautiful leather chocolate couch in an apartment that had these gorgeous yellow curtains. I got this vision and I held on to it. And Shereen, what's really hilarious is everything that I wrote down, I had been taught write the vision, make it plain, right? And this wasn't even a true vision board in the sense of I had pictures and, now we have GIFs and all of that. It was just me crying out on a piece of paper that I kept in my purse for an entire year. And during that year, I ended up at 3 different shelters with my children. But my children can attest, they said, but mom, every shelter got better.
Mhm.
We got better every round we went.
Mhm.
And between March of 2004 and 2005,
Mhm.
I became a police dispatcher
Wow. Wow.
and I fell asleep on a bus. I was so tired from working 2 jobs. I fell asleep on a bus and I kept thinking, I need a cell phone. I have to call the hospital. My son was in the hospital and I was going between the hospital, my job, my other job, picking up my other 2 kids from daycare, getting 2 hours of sleep, going back to visit my son, all on the train in Chicago, from the top of Chicago down to the bottom of Chicago, down to the suburbs. If you're familiar with Chicago, it's a big city.
It is.
So
Yes.
I was clocking miles. I feel like I should have been paid for that, but I was clocking
Mhm.
miles. And I remember telling myself, I kind of stopped praying a little bit. I
Mhm.
was like, you need a cell phone. How can you get a cell phone? And I thought I have $127 to my name right now, but I need a cell phone. And I fell asleep and I woke up. I missed my stop. And when I got up to get off at the next stop, a lady said, ma'am, there's a paper stuck to your bum. And I pulled the paper off, and it was an ad for Sprint cell phones, $127.
Wow.
I got $127, but I know it's going to cost tax because this is Chicago.
Mm.
So I get, and I was like, I don't even know where a Sprint store is anyway. The
Mhm.
moment I stepped off the bus and the bus pulled by, I was standing in front of a Sprint store.
Wow.
Well,
Wow.
and how much would it cost with taxes? She said, oh, there's no taxes, just 127 even. I walked out with a cell phone. And then I found a place through the shelter, but they kept taking us to these gorgeous apartments. But I knew it wasn't my apartment. So I would always let the other women that they would take with us, oh, this will be great for you. And they would go, I thought you wanted it. I thought they were going to give it to you. No, this
Mhm.
is for you. Mine isn't here yet. I
Mhm.
dreamed mine. I had a balcony. The balcony door had a skeleton key, had
Mhm.
a built-in back porch for my kids to play in the winter. All
Mhm.
of a sudden, all the dreams that I had for other people, I began to have for myself. And I remember the last place the lady took us to, she said, this is the last apartment. I really want you to take this because I just see greatness in you. I want you to have it. Nope, I'm giving it to this young lady. It's important for her to have this apartment. And as we
Mhm.
left, I kind of started second guessing myself. Okay, now I keep giving up these great places, but I know this isn't for me. I
Mhm.
fell asleep, and when I woke up, she was pulling in front of a place. She said, I was praying when we left that apartment that this man would let this apartment go on the market, even though he
Mhm.
said he wouldn't. He just called me and said, something just told him, go ahead, whoever you want to show it to, just show it to them. I was the only one left.
Wow.
And I was the only one left. She pulled up and I said, this is my apartment. She said, how do you know you haven't been inside? I said, the balcony door has a skeleton key. And she looked at me and we walked in. I remember going upstairs, there was a balcony. And she said, Shakeinah, she said, I don't know what it is about you, girl, but you are magic. She pulled out a skeleton key and it went to the balcony door. That was
Wow.
the place. And it taught me to trust myself. That was 11 months after I went to a shelter
Mhm.
against my family's wishes, did everything against their wishes because I knew that if I keep going with what you want me to go with, I'm probably going to be on the news dead. February 8th, I moved into my apartment. Now, here's the kicker, I went in as a police dispatcher. That's what I wanted to be. On March 8th, exactly 11 months and like 30 days to my last birthday when I left, 364 days later, I was sworn in as a police officer on my birthday, and I had been in my apartment for a month. And the chocolate couch, we cannot forget about. My mom asked me to take her to pick up her car in the suburbs. And
Mhm.
I thought, you know what? Sure, I'll go. Go with her. I have this good feeling and I don't know why. And she goes, hey, let's go look at the thrift store across the street while we're waiting. Cool beans. But I also want to go look for this chocolate couch. She's like, okay, let's do it. As we pull in, a man is pulling in with this gorgeous chocolate couch on the back of his pickup truck. And I was like, Mom, that's my couch. She said, you've been talking about it. So apparently it is. It just appeared. I said, sir, how much for the couch? He said, ma'am, if you could take it now, it's yours for free.
Wow.
Couch, and then my mom surprised me with some yellow curtains. It all came together when I chose myself, which is the scariest thing you will ever do. Because
Mhm.
choosing yourself forces you to confront, face, and then kill off your old self.
Mhm.
And I'm always running around telling people and quoting that meme, your new life will cost you your old life. I decided that the cost of my new life was much more affordable. My old life. And I began to trust in myself as the authority in my life.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Wow. So now you're like in this beautiful new apartment, starting to feel settled. You've achieved your dream of becoming a police officer. And so now I want to understand, like, how did you go from police officer to energy healer and intuitive?
You know, it's funny. I don't think that there's a separation, at
Mhm.
least what I do. I think that I served almost like a spiritual as a spiritual advisor when I was a police officer, even when I was a dispatcher. People would call just to hear my voice. They would say it's so soothing. I'm like, but this is the 911 line. So, well, I'll call on the
Yeah.
emergency. That's still the 911 line. So the reason why I became a police officer was actually because the juvenile cell was in the dispatch office. So I would end up talking to these kids, baby, why are you not in your warm bed at night? What's
Mhm.
going on? And I realized for the most part, it wasn't the kids, it was their parents. So I started reaching out to the parents. Your child needs to be in therapy, and so do you. It's
Mhm.
not just about your child, they're reacting off of you. And so people started calling and asking, and who is this dispatcher talking to my kid? Because my kid's different. So I was
Mhm.
going to be a juvenile officer, but ended up becoming a police officer. But I always made sure there would be arguments with people. And by the time I arrived and talked, they were like, you know what? We have been neighbors for 20 years. And I don't know what, girl, let's leave that in the past. I forgive you. I forgive you too. And my partners would be standing there like, what the hell is happening? What's going on? So this is police work. It's not just
Mhm.
about arresting people.
Mhm.
The serve and protect can also mean I'm serving and protecting you from your own wounded ego.
Mhm.
Let's get you back into your common sense, my love, so that you don't have to go to jail. Because if I don't have to arrest your behavior, if I can show you how to do that yourself, pause, baby. Stop
Mhm.
that behavior. Think. Anger makes you blind, deaf, and dumb.
Mhm.
Pull that anger back in. Why are you angry? Where did the frustration start? And use your words.
Mhm.
Then you don't have to go to jail.
Mhm.
How about that?
Mhm.
So that was a lot of the work that I did. Um, a lot of de-escalation, really, so that that person can come back to themselves and be their own inner authority.
Mhm.
Because then I will let them know you don't know how far the judge is going to go with this
Mhm.
once you're arrested. You're
Mhm.
not in charge of those consequences anymore. Can you be in charge of yourself now? And I started taking that and using that to teach my children as well.
Mhm.
And then I left it because it was a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons was I was pulling over young men who looked like who my sons would grow into.
Mhm.
They would be A students, you know, really great in the community, but they may have had a roach joint in their, you know, ashtray or something. And they all had the same story. My dad's a firefighter. My mom's a police officer. My mom's a nurse. My dad's a cop. My mom's a lawyer. My dad's a doctor. The parents weren't home.
Mhm.
Here they are achieving their parents' dream, but who am I? Where do I fit in this? Where do my desires fit in this? Well, I'll smoke, and that at least this is where I can actually be my authentic self
Mhm.
when I alter my mindset so that I can cope. And I didn't want that for my sons. So I pulled away from that. But even in doing that, I was always doing spiritual work. I worked at a funeral home for a while. There's that Scorpio moon for me and my stellium in the eighth house.
Mhm.
And I realized that the bridge between life and death, the veil was so thin that there really isn't a veil.
Mhm.
You acknowledge that the veil is just your disbelief or your unbelief.
Mhm. Mhm.
But life and death is this synergetic interaction at all times.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I learned that between the funeral home and dealing with the citizens in their own neighborhoods who wanted change, but were always looking on the outside for it. For me, it was my job to say, oh, baby, it is on the inside. You do not want these cuffs on you, because
Mhm.
then that's showing where you have cuffed yourself in your mind. When you go to jail, that is an outward expression of how you have imprisoned your thoughts and you have limited yourself.
Mhm.
And prison is supposed to be for rehabilitation.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's not. But if you don't know how to rehabilitate your mind, then you end up going to a place that slows that growth,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
So that's a part of the work that I did as just the spiritual unicorn that I am.
Yeah, yeah. And so when did you like actually make the full transition? So now you have this beautiful practice and like you have clients and like you use your intuition to like guide your clients. Like tell me a little bit more about like how did you decide like okay, I want to, basically just be magical now and that's what I want my focus to be. How did you decide that?
In 2017, we had the eclipse.
Mhm.
And I remember I had just found out what my North Node was.
Mhm.
My
Mhm.
North Node is in Leo.
Mhm.
And I remember someone telling me, oh, your purpose is going to be activated this year. And I kept saying, I really feel that something's happening here and I
Mhm.
have to stand into more authority, but I don't really like Leos.
Mhm.
And she cracked up laughing. I said, they're just, they're so Leo. And she said, oh, honey, that's literally you. That's why you don't like it. That's when I found out we have every sign in the chart. Darn it, can't escape myself on any level.
Mhm.
And the very thing that I didn't like was the sign and the energy that I was here to master.
Mhm.
How dare you tell me my North Node is in Leo and I'm supposed to be at the forefront? Absolutely not. I've spent my life trying to be in the background. But
Mhm.
then I remembered at every interaction, I could be at the back of the stage or the back of the classroom. By the time things were over with, I was at the front.
Mhm.
And no
Mhm.
matter how much I tried to hide it, I felt like the scripture, if I cover my head, my feet will show. If I cover my feet, my head will show. Can't get away from my purpose. So I decided to study it. And when we had that great eclipse, I looked on the map to see where you could experience the eclipse the longest because I wanted all the energy.
Mhm.
And I drove to, I think it was Murphy or Murfreesboro. It's either North or South Carolina.
Mhm.
And I remember when I got there, the highest peak that I could find was on church grounds. I thought, okay, this is hilarious. Real cute universe.
Mhm.
And I pull into the lot and we're like the only Black people there.
Mhm.
And I realized, oh, I think I've hit a Mayberry part of the country. We're going to see this eclipse and then we're going to go home.
Mhm.
But I remember sitting on the roof of our minivan. I bought eclipse glasses and we're watching this beautiful eclipse happen, but something's stirring inside of me.
Mhm.
And I began to hear, like, this, it's time out for you hiding from yourself. You thought you were hiding from the world. No, you're
Mhm.
hiding from yourself. And right as the eclipse was maximized, it looked like instantly the sun set and someone had snatched the shower curtain away from the stars who were getting ready for the night. And they were like, whoa, hey, excuse me, what? Pardon you? Why are you here? It's not time. It looked so surreal. On one side of the street, full sunlight, on the other side, darkness.
Mhm.
It was something that you would only really see in a movie. And
Mhm.
instantly, I started singing just spontaneously, This Little Light of Mine. I'm like, why am I singing that? And then people start singing it with me.
Mhm.
Did not realize that such a big sign of your North Node in Leo being activated. Of course, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine and everywhere I go.
Mhm.
And I remember driving home. Well, first we tried to get some ice cream. They let us know no N words allowed. And I was like, cool beans, because I got ice cream at home. know, but we had to drive through almost like this forest. And I remember it rained almost the entire time.
Mhm.
And I cried the entire time. I was so glad we had a DVD player in the minivan. I sobbed because I knew that the marriage I was in, I had to get out of. I was like, this is your third iteration in this cycle.
And sorry, just to clarify this, and this is not your first husband, not your high school. Okay, got it.
My first husband, got away from him. And so different marriage. But
Mhm,
I think this was the most mature marriage I had been in, or the most mature relationship, because I would not allow certain abuses.
mhm,
There was some mistreatment,
mhm,
but wasn't the heavy abuse.
mhm,
And I remember driving home and I just kept thinking, I don't know how, but universe, God, Jesus, Buddha, all my peeps, where y'all at? I have to get out of this so that I can heal myself. I have to forgive my father for not being there. He
mhm,
was not supposed to be there in the way I thought he was supposed to be. And thank you for not stopping my growth, Dad. Thank you for being away and doing what you needed to do for you. My
mhm,
mother could only give me so much.
mhm,
Thank you, Mom, for mothering me. I can take the reins on that and continue to meet and exceed my own needs.
mhm,
My family didn't support me on this and they blah, 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 blah. No, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. I just didn't get a rite of passage into my adulthood.
mhm,
I got what they knew and I
mhm,
wanted to experience something different.
mhm,
So thank you for showing me this side.
mhm,
Thank you. And now I'm going to experience life on the other side where I'm the authority.
mhm,
And driving home that day, feeling that click. I've seen a different side of myself, a different side of the sun,
mhm,
a different side of the divine masculine sun coming into contact with the divine feminine,
mhm,
and how we need them both.
mhm,
I need to study this.
mhm,
And a friend of mine hooked me up with a human design reading.
mhm, mhm.
And I went, oh, whoa, this makes sense.
Yeah.
And I started to study astrology. I took an astrology class. And within the third class, she said, I'm going to have to pull you out for private classes because you're kind of way ahead. And I realized that the way that I saw a natal chart was
Mhm,
more 3D and 4D than 2D.
mhm,
It was like I could go into that person's life. And
mhm,
I remember the first time I really looked at a chart, I thought, wait a minute. I remember when I was 17 and I was coming into myself and how people started to shut me down. I knew something that I shut off. And so I asked God and whomever, whatever gift this is, take it from me. I
mhm,
don't want it anymore. Whatever intuition is, I don't like it. It's
mhm,
not working for me. People don't like me when I use it. I'm done with it.
mhm,
That started to come back. And I realized I had had such a gap in my life from maybe about 27, like right around my Saturn return.
mhm,
I shed all religion. I don't want it anymore. Screw
mhm,
it. I'm going to be agnostic.
mhm,
And then I'm going to explore atheism. Then I'm going to explore the other side of that. So I kind of came in as the super religious kid, kind of dipped down. What's the occult world? Oh, let's go all the way
mhm,
down to atheism. I don't believe in anything.
mhm,
To
mhm,
realizing, but I do. I believe
mhm,
in me. I'm the one who gets my ass up every morning.
mhm,
I'm
mhm,
the one who makes these plans and I have to make them happen. I'm the one who is pulling all of these resources together.
mhm,
What source does that come from?
mhm,
If I am a child of God, or I have every element in me that appears in the universe, and I'm a
mhm,
child of the universe, then that means that I am of source. If my parents were a king and a queen, I would be a princess. I would be of royal blood.
mhm,
I am what I am. I am
mhm,
source energy. I am God embodied in flesh. I am goddess embodied in flesh.
mhm,
I'm just a
mhm,
physical example. And
mhm,
saying that out loud used to freak me out. But I started learning how to live it. I tapped into my Leo North Node.
mhm,
And I realized that when I was younger, I always had dreams of lions and lionesses, always. And they were so real. I
mhm,
could feel them panting. I could feel the thinning hair around their bellies and their manes getting thicker, going up their backs. And they would always come to me.
mhm,
And they're not even my favorite animal, but I will always get these Leo images and would draw a lot of Leo people. So I
mhm,
started paying attention to them
mhm,
and learning, oh, you are naturally charismatic.
mhm,
You are pretty. It's okay, boo. It's all right.
mhm,
It's okay to have pride.
mhm,
The pride comes before a fall. Yeah, too much pride.
mhm.
you know, but you do have to be proud of yourself and your accomplishments. And I started setting more goals and the more women I started talking to, I realized, wait a minute, we're all going through the same thing, but we're not really talking to each other about it.
Mhm.
Or when we talk about it, it's from a place of misery.
Mhm.
And do you hear how horrible it is for me? Do you hear how horrible it is for me? And you both
Mhm.
leave because you don't leave with anything solved. You just leave re-victimized. And I realized there was a lot of re-victimization going on as the cycles would start and end. Not much was accomplished. And
Mhm.
so I took my magical ass on a mushroom journey.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I did the mushroom journey. I wrote down 10 questions. I'm like, yes, I'm going to go talk to God, source. Like, let me see wwho you really are. And
Yeah.
after the journey, all of my questions were answered instantly. And I was kind of like, well, what do I do now? Because, whoa, she was like, yep, don't even ask me about your kids. Those are my babies. You are the
Ugh.
You stop worrying about them because whenever they're ready to come back to source, they're coming back to source. Let all
Mhm.
that other stuff go. Can you be their guide and absolve yourself from having to raise them? Raise them to what? And I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be raising them to. And instantly, when I went in the trip, I said, Mama.
Mhm.
I thought I was going to say, Hey, God, how you doing, sir? Nice beard.
Mhm.
It was instantly Mama, and
Mhm.
she said to me, my love, you're a guide. You are not, you think that you're their parents, but you're really their guide. You all parent one another. You
Mhm.
are to learn from them as they learn from you. And I knew that in a sense, but I was afraid to truly believe in that
Mhm. Mhm.
because you don't want, as a parent, your authority,
Mhm.
to be trampled over. But I
Mhm.
realized that, and so she said, you're raising them to have their own inner authority.
Mhm.
That's the vibration you're raising them to, for them to be able to make cogent decisions, not from a place of confusion, and to understand that there is a consequence to every choice, even the choices that they refuse to make when presented with one. And so I
Mhm.
was getting all these lessons of the vibration or the frequency in which I was to raise my children to, and then
Mhm.
really. And then she told me, I remember looking up and she said, look down, look all around. Why stop that shit? You're not just looking up.
I
Every
love
around
that.
you, it's me. Everything around you is you. And so I asked her, what does love look like? And this is what fundamentally changed my life. I remember I said, I will never do anything that I can't handle. I will never take anything that if my children are at home, I still wouldn't be able to do what I needed to do for them. So
Mhm.
my children were at home. They had gone to bed. But I forgot my oldest had just turned like 13. So he had a half an hour later bedtime.
Mhm.
I didn't realize he was still up. So when I asked, I said, what does love look like?
Mhm.
My son immediately from the back room yelled, good night, mom. In that good night, mom moment, it was the slowest and fastest good night, mom I've ever heard in my life. It was like, good night, mom. But with every syllable, something appeared.
Mhm.
And I realized it was this shape
Mhm.
and it had the most gorgeous colors I can't even explain in human language.
Mhm.
But some of them were deeply purple and almost like a fuchsia hue, but that mermaid blue green. It was just so amazing. And it started swirling. And I was like, is that the Matrix? She said, child, that's love. But the more he spoke, even when he got to the mom part,
Mhm.
it expanded and started to encompass my body so much so that I felt this immediate expansion. And I fell to the ground and I put my hands up to say, I'm about to explode.
Mhm.
And I felt it. And before I could say it, I felt the shape, the sensation immediately begin to recede. And she said, if you were to tap into pure love in this sense, your body would explode. However, I wanted you to see just how encompassing love is. And basically, and now find out what that shape is. And it took me 2 weeks to find out what the shape was. I came across a video by Spirit Science called the toroidal flow, the heart chakra. They were talking about the heart chakra. And
Mhm.
I knew that that's what love was.
Mhm.
When I came out of my mushroom trip, the next day, I remember we went to a yoga um, thing at the park, a yoga gathering. And
Mhm.
there were all of these little kids. They just started walking up to me and their eyes were really big. And they would reach out to me and I'm reaching out to them. And my husband at the time was standing there like, what the heck is going on? And I would say, "Hi, little universe." And it was like we had this special greeting, this special connection. And I was like, "I see you. I get it.
Mhm.
You chose your family for a reason. I
Mhm.
know you're two and you probably don't really understand physically, but I know you know spiritually.
Mhm.
Baby, it is going to be all right." And I mean, just kids the entire time. I would be in a yoga pose. Here comes a kid underneath me to give me a hug. And I felt like that was such a confirmation for the universe. Like, baby, let me show you love.
Mhm.
So when I found it and watched the spirit science video on the toroidal field, or what some people call the torus, I highly encourage your listeners, if you don't know what that is, to look it up. You may have seen it somewhere, but it is an example of our energy field and us being the source of that, just constantly as our own, as above, so below, as within, so without,
Mhm.
and how we can expand our energy to include other people, or we can contract it. But when we contract it, we're pulling ourselves away from the resources, lessons, and gifts that come through other people and our experiences with them.
Mhm.
So I began to study the toroidal field, and I started talking to more people about it. I was like, I can't keep this inside. Go ahead. Y'all already think I'm crazy anyway. Go
Mhm.
ahead. And I realized more people were exploring that than I thought. And on a whim, I decided to have a full moon gathering because the full moon was sit so beautifully in my yard.
Mhm.
And I didn't know that that many people would show up. Thank goodness I was prepared. And we had such an amazing time. And everyone said, "You have to do this. Like, this is you. We
Mhm.
have never seen you as you,
Mhm.
just being of service to people, not being burned out from it, giving, teaching, learning with us, do this again. Can you do this again?" And so I started doing full moon circles at the house and started getting into tarot and realized that I had a natural affinity to that. I'm a Pisces. So Pisces deals with imagination. Pisces is the most mature sign in your chart.
Mhm.
It is also the strongest sign in your chart. It's not the weakest. It's carrying the load from Aries all the way to Aquarius on its back.
Mhm.
That's why Pisceans can seem so heavy and old. We know y'all. Okay.
Mhm.
We are you all. We're just your reflection. And we have to learn, as our dear Piscean sister Erica Badu said, not to be the bag lady or the spiritual bag lady. We have to release what no longer serves. And
Mhm.
so I had to learn that I would have all these interactions with people. But a part of my gift was taking the leadership role with that Leo North node to say, "My love, your as above and so below is showing. I'm thinking people to see your spiritual slip now, honey. You know how the older women in the church, your slip is showing, baby. I got a pen for you in my purse. It's stuck to a peppermint, but I got a pen for you." So it was like, I need you may want to hem that up before you start your next cycle. How
Mhm.
can we release what you have in a safe space? Or what I like to say, release it to the universe for eternal disposal. Let it just go there, so
Mhm.
that you can free yourself for this new cycle, so that you enter it not based on other people's conditions for your life, but
Mhm.
you enter it as clear minded as you can. Neptunian energy is not just about clouding things, it is
Mhm.
also about clear sight in your darkest moments. It's about clear sight
Mhm.
when you're in the depths of your dark night of the soul, when you're in the depths of your Saturn return. 2020
Mhm.
is about clear vision in the darkest times. This is the time of
2020.
Yes, 2020. It's the endarkened vision. Now I mean you can see in the day. How do you see
Mhm.
when you feel like you can't reach source anymore? You see all these beautiful images about space, but it's black out there. You have to be really close to see something. It's black, it's darkness. It's the womb
Mhm.
space. And I knew that I hadn't been properly taught about my womb space and how it is a beautiful co-creator, and
Mhm.
how if I'm not rooted in safety, my womb space does not want to produce something from a place of chaos and trauma.
Mhm.
So all of my co-creations are going to be stunted.
Mhm.
I learned I had to get safe in my sense of purpose. I had to take my anger and frustration about what I wasn't taught and
Mhm.
to let that go and turn that anger into passion. Well, how can I be passionate about making sure that not that doesn't happen to me again, but that I'm in charge from now on in
Mhm.
regards to my experiences?
Mhm.
And then how do I put that passion to purpose? There has to be a container for it. My
Yeah,
purpose is to
placement of all the chakras.
Yeah.
Started with that safety, that root chakra, then that sacral chakra, that passion up to the solar plexus, that purpose. I love it.
Yeah, and then the heart space connects your as above to the soul below. It connects your as within to the soul without. It's just your inside and your outside. The
Mhm,
womb space, giving birth, the
mhm,
friction that happens with either sexual intercourse or spiritual intercourse. We're always intercoursing with something. Our energy is always meeting something and absorbing it or bouncing off of it through friction. How do we meet that energy and know how to integrate it
mhm,
or dismiss it if we're done with it or we don't necessarily need it at that time?
mhm,
And so, even going up the chakras, that heart space, what is your true desire? And do you have the courage of heart? Leo is about courage. It's the lion-hearted one. It's the
mhm,
first place in the chart where you have to display courage by standing on your own and
mhm,
utilizing your own beautiful ego, knowing that it is not your enemy, but that you are to make friends with it.
mhm,
Hey, work for me, boo. This is the desire I want, but
mhm,
through my ego, through my personality, this is how I like it. I may want some ice cream. My ego says, French vanilla with authentic vanilla. And someone else may say, well, give me the dollar brand with the artificial flavoring.
mhm,
If you're satisfied with that, my love, enjoy. I prefer this type. That's cool. And we're both satisfied. Had to realize my spirituality and the unique way that I took this amalgamation of whatever served me best. And I planted the rest. I don't throw away much at all. You know how to say, keep the meat, throw away the bones. Mm-mm. That can make some good stock,
mhm,
bone broth. There are still vitamins and minerals in it, baby. You
mhm,
know, so I keep what I don't necessarily or can't integrate at the moment. I plant it, and if it grows into a weed, that's okay. I know how to prune. Now I
mhm,
know that that's a weed, but it may grow into a weed that's actually good for me.
mhm.
So I've
There's lots
learned.
of weeds that are good.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't know dandelion was an amazing weed, and true gardeners say a weed is just something that you don't necessarily want to cultivate.
Mhm,
It could be a rose, but those are weeds to your tiger lily garden.
mhm,
So I had to learn to take this amalgamation of information and to synthesize it through my experiences. Does this work from Buddhism? Kind of not for me, but it works for my bestie. Awesome.
mhm,
Does
mhm,
this part of yes, that works for me. That's
mhm,
good. And I don't have to deny something because it came from another culture,
mhm,
or another place and time, because we all just go through cycles. I could have easily grown up as a Buddhist
mhm,
rather than a Christian. At the end of the day, I was still going to be seeking inner peace, or
mhm,
that peace that surpasseth all understanding.
mhm,
So taking all of that together, and because I was working on it on the inside, I love the gospel song, something on the inside, working on the outside. Oh, what a change in my life. There was a change on the inside of me
mhm,
that began to give me the feedback that I was seeking.
mhm,
And other people who were saying, wow, I've been looking for somebody like you. And I went, me?
mhm,
The old ugly, abused me who pulled herself out of being just a survivor. I didn't want to stay a survivor. I had a business for a while called Surviving Departure. And it was such an example of what I was going through, learning how to survive the departure of anything that didn't serve me anymore. And I took that from my first plane ride because I was super scared, but I had to have faith in a pilot I'd never met, riding a piece of hunk of metal. I wasn't sure it was fully certified or had been fully inspected. And it had to take me from this place to that place. And even though I've seen it on a map, I don't know it to be true because I haven't experienced it, but I have to trust. That was how I would leave certain relationships and situations. I have to trust that there's something better. And I started using when the pain of leaving is less than the pain of staying, it's time to go. And then I realized that was just a stepping stone. I didn't have to leave from a place of pain anymore.
mhm,
And so I became a thriver. I had a business called Get You Some Free.
mhm,
That came to me in a dream. Meaning you need to get you some free every day in every way by any means necessary. How are you going to do that, my love? And
mhm,
my goal was to have women all over the world say, oh, honey, no, not today. I got to get me some free, even from myself. And then that happened.
mhm,
I remember the first lady from India who said, I got me some free, Ninah. And I went, oh, it
mhm,
worked. And then my business shifted again to
mhm,
self-loveology because I
mhm,
realized that once you survive, and then you learn how to thrive and through without re-victimizing yourself. you learn how to thrive, and then you learn how to get free from your own inner demons that you created, not your parents, not society, not God, not the devil, your own obstacles. There's a book that I always tell people about that I've never read. I just read the title and I was like, I'm healed. I'm good. I touched the hem of his garment. I'm whole. I don't even need to read the rest. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. And I just knew right then and there, that just sums up my life. Every time I create an obstacle, I'm the one who has to dismantle it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I get a little help from my friends. Most of the times I don't, because I'm the one who created the wall. And once I was able to thrive and see these obstacles, I was able to get me some free. And it's not get you some free. It's baby, get you some free. This is some real deal, holy filled, not professionally packaged in a gorgeous pink bow. This is, you have to do the work inside of your own soul. That is going to be the funkiest closet you ever clean out in your life. That is when you discover that you are the hoarder of hoarders, the ignorer of ignorers, and you have all of these traumas that you can either continue to hide or treat as traumas, or you can say, come here, baby, come here. I remember when your mother yelled at you for this, or your dad walked out for this, but you're not there anymore. I'm gonna need you to stop time traveling to the past. And you're a professional at that. You know how to do that. And every time you go back, does anything change? No, it does not. If you can approach it from a different perspective, your parents grew up in this generation, and in this time, they had only the amount of information that they could handle. And they did the best that they could with what they had, even if the best is not up to your standards. So it is now your job to know you cannot operate in that frequency. It doesn't serve you. Now it's time to raise yourself, get you some free, stop using that as an obstacle. And then the self-loveology came in with everything that I do has to extend from self-love. That is my boundary. I didn't have any boundaries. Pisces, we have to learn boundaries. And the greatest boundary any Piscean can learn, anybody really, because we all have Pisces in our chart, but the greatest boundary you can learn is the boundary of self-love. I am so bound to my self-love, Shereen, that I will not allow myself to agree to something that's going to harm me. So if you tell me that you want to talk to me and try to make me feel like a piece of gum under somebody's shoe, the way my self-love is set up, it is bound to unconditional love. And I know that that's not what that's coming from. It's coming from your hurt. I can either address your pain and we can work on it if you're willing, or I can let you know at the gate, my love, not here and not today. I got me some free. Because love, honey, not the one. Would you like to learn how to do that too? So I had to learn that. And then everything that I've learned, I then have to teach. And I was like, darn, here comes that North Node and Leo again. You gotta be out front. And my 10th house is owned literally by Scorpio energy. Moon is there at 29 degrees. So that means that I've mastered a lot of scorpionic energy. I get it. Forgiveness is hard, but it's mostly hard because it has to begin with the self first. Jealousy and envy and all of the things that come with scorpionic energy are really tools, and they're amazing tools. A lot of them are rusty. We have rusty tools. And so we have people and situations that come into our lives to go, hey, let's clean that oil up. I need you to use this, and explore jealousy and explore why it's necessary in certain situations to cue you, not to trigger you, but to cue you into, ooh, am I in alignment if I'm thinking about what he's doing and what she's doing and why I can't have, and let me get myself, I am source. What I was tripping. I let you lead a little bit too long today. I'm gonna need you to take this back seat right here. Okay. I'm in charge. My authenticity is in charge. And Leos are the opposite of Aquarius. They both deal with authenticity. But because my North Node is in Leo, I have to display it through my experiences first. Then I can share it with the world, which is kind of what I'm doing here now.
I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh. Wow. That was so awesome. Thank you so much for, taking us through your journey and then, dropping lots of nuggets of beautiful knowledge along the way. So I want to say here at Magic Hour, we always end an episode with questions about feeding your soul. So I just love to hear more about, how people care for themselves spiritually and emotionally. And so we definitely covered a lot, but there's a couple quick things I would love to hear you share. So the first one is, are there any consistent activities or rituals you do to maintain a sense of inner peace?
I do. One of the things that I do consistently is affirmations. Never underestimate the power of affirming your soul. It's so necessary. It's water to your soul.
Mhm.
So I start off with, it's kind of a version of Miracle Morning, if you've heard of that. And I
Mhm.
kind of modified it for myself
Mhm.
because I can't wake up and just do silence. Usually my dreams, I'm a professional dreamer. Pisces are professional dreamers. Please let us dream, y'all. We're
Mhm.
not lazy. We're just the dreamers.
Mhm.
So I usually wake up and have to write down a dream or something. So
Mhm.
I learned how to modify other people's ways of self-care to what works for me.
Mhm.
I'll either write down my dreams or I have a beautiful journal called The Magic of I, where I can write down things and it shows the astrological placements. So I'm like, oh, I'm so in alignment, or oh, girl, I'm gonna need you to step back over here to
Mhm.
get what you want.
Mhm.
And in the mornings, my kids, they hear me because I talk out loud. Don't keep it all to yourself. A part of my self care is talking out loud so that I can hear the
Mhm.
words that are coming out of my mouth.
Mhm.
That helps me realize, oh, you were in a thought loop, Ninah.
Mhm.
That thought loop is unhealthy. So I'll start talking out loud and then I'll realize, okay, now I'm starting to channel. My
Mhm.
authenticity is like, and the messages for today are,
Mhm.
and I listen, because when I don't, I know I'm outside of self care. And then everything I do will drain my energy. And I'm not here to drain my energy. My energy is supposed to be circulated, just like the heart circulates blood, just
Mhm.
like our thoughts circulate and go into thought loops. It
Mhm.
depends on what thought loop you're in. So it
Mhm.
helps to keep me in a healthy thought loop throughout my day when I start my day with affirming myself, who I am. I know who I am.
Mhm.
I am unconditional love expressed.
Mhm.
I know what I am. I
Mhm.
am the universe embodied,
Mhm.
and I know how I serve in love, for love, by love, and through love. That's the first affirmation I say every day.
Mhm.
Besides Happy New Day. Anybody who knows me, if you call me or if it's our first text, Happy New Day, because it's a new day. I have forgiven myself from what I didn't accomplish yesterday. I've
Mhm.
forgiven myself for being too hard or too easy on
Mhm.
myself. And
Mhm.
today, because it is new, I get to seek to bring myself into balance with my environment.
Oh, I love that. What a beautiful way to start the morning. I write down affirmations every morning too. So like I totally vibe with that ritual. Okay, so when it comes to self-development, what are the books or tools that really offered life-changing discoveries for you?
Oh, the first book that I often quote is The Four Agreements. The Four
I
Agreements.
love Don Miguel Ruiz. He's fantastic.
I give it to everybody. I have Amazon is probably like, baby, you might want to sell these wholesale. My clients, sometimes I give them books that I know would really help their lives. And so the Four
Mhm.
Agreements, it's one. Another of my favorite, it's a very short book and it uses a lot of scriptures, but my loves, I encourage you to read Feeling is the Secret by Neville Goddard. You can get the PDF online for free.
Mhm.
This is, if I can give you a really great gift, feeling is the secret, knowing that you have to feel and embody what you want to manifest in order to experience it fully.
Mhm.
And you
Mhm.
have to train yourself for that. And
Mhm.
another book is called Surfing Your Solar Cycles.
Mm.
Oh my goodness, the name of the author just flew out of my head. It's Neil something. Oh my gosh.
That's okay. We'll put it down in the show notes. Mm.
So surfing your solar cycles is great. It takes your sun sign as it goes through the cycles of the zodiac. Every year, you are
Mhm.
going to face the same common themes. I don't want you all to leave this podcast and be ignorant of the fact that we have cycles that we face all the time. And
Mhm.
this gives you that heads up on how to navigate those and how to maximize the energy of that theme. When the sun is in Scorpio, we're all Scorpios. When the
Mhm.
sun is in, Aries, we're all experiencing Aries energy, but through whatever house it is in your chart.
Yeah.
So it shows you how to navigate that. And that is A Gift That Keeps on Giving. Those are probably the first 3 books off the top of my head, and anything by Octavia Butler.
Oh god, I love her so much. Like, a lot of people like don't talk about her, but a good friend of mine recommended one of her books to me, and like I think it was the Lilith series that I read. So amazing. So for those of you guys that don't know, she's a sci-fi writer, was a sci-fi writer, and beautiful, beautiful, magical, spiritual, just fantastic books. Highly, highly recommend. I think it's Lilith's Brood. That was the first group that I read.
Yes.
um, Fantastic.
But and actually look up her manifesto. She wrote that she would have all of these accomplishments when everyone told her, "No, you're Black, people don't, and you're a female, and you wear an
Mhm.
afro, and you're also Black." Like, where you getting these lofty ideas that you can be this famous sci-fi writer, a best-selling sci-fi writer? You're nuts. But she is
Yeah,
such a prime example of the magic of words and embodying them. And a really great series by her, I think, is called Seed to Harvest. It's a 3
yeah,
parts, but the story of Awanyu and Doro and how things change. I actually use a part of her book when I'm manifesting. She kind of gives this example of like a web, almost like a spider's web, but this web of mental connection. And I
mhm,
use that when I need something. I know that all of my resources are on this plane. And I reach out to that matrix. I'm like, hey, what frequency, are my clients on for this? What frequency is my vacation on? I need to match that. Let's go. Line me up, And I may see a commercial or an ad come through or something that I was just thinking about that lets me know I am on that frequency. And Octavia Butler was an author that will teach you so much about yourself through her storytelling.
yeah. Oh, thank you for shouting her out. Okay, and then the third and final question is, when you're in an emotional rut, what's your go-to ways to bring yourself out of that feeling?
Laughter, laughter, laughter. I have Gemini on the fifth house. I have to laugh every day. It is so important. And I make myself laugh all the time, but I have to have laughter. Music is another way of that. And I've learned that when I kind of can go into a depression during the winter months when I'm in the north,
Mhm,
it doesn't really happen in the south because the sunshine is more
mhm,
consistent.
mhm,
But in the winter, sad seasonal affective depression is so real.
mhm,
And I realized that when I don't see the sun or I can't get out, I have to go within first. And within my soul is a foundation of music, poetry, laughter, song, dance, but also movement.
mhm,
So I look to where Venus is in my chart. Well, what do you love to do, Mama? What do you love to do today? I love
mhm,
my body. I love to eat. So I'm going to put my favorite things together. I will put on a comedy show, or like my favorites right now, like Kev on stage, online, his and Tony Baker's voiceovers. Oh my gosh! So I'll put that on, and I'll turn, I'll have some music a little bit in the background, and I'll cook something, and I'm moving, and I'm
mhm,
laughing,
mhm,
fixing myself something to eat. Like all of my senses are tantalized, and it pulls me out of, because I think depression is the suppression of your creativity. It's
mhm,
the suppression of expression.
mhm,
So I realized, oh, I'm down in the dumps and I'm in my bed and my covers are over my head, but I'm not expressing anything
mhm,
or I'm not co-creating.
mhm,
And I'll leave this bit with your lovely audience. The ABCs of the universe begin like this. And I learned this from a mushroom trip, so I know it's true for me. Might not
mhm,
be true for you, but I'll share it. The ABCs of the universe is always be co-creating. I want to co-create with you. That's all I know how to do. What would you like to co-create? We can co-create from a place of panic. We can co-create some crap if you want to. I want to show you just how powerful you are. Anything you plant, anything you want to grow, I will grow it. Do you want to grow something of beauty, something sustaining? Do you want a legacy? I will grow that with you. Tell me what you want in the seed, because that is what we're going to plant and that is what's going to grow. So if I'm not co-creating and I'm under my pillows and my blankets and I'm hanging out with sorrow, hello darkness, my old friend. I'm like, how y'all doing, misery? Baby, come on and give me a hug. No,
mhm,
misery loves company so much it doesn't want to let you go. And I can only spend so much time visiting that house just to remind me, oh, sweetie, you know what you're not doing? You're not co-creating anything. How can
mhm,
you co-create? So that's when the music and the this and the that, or the candles. I'm getting in my tub and I'm dancing, probably making a mess, but I'm having fun and
mhm,
I'm bringing myself back into co-creation in the way that I want to be co-creating. I'm not suppressing myself anymore. So that is what instantly helps me. That or my kids. They always make me laugh. But that's what helps me instantly. If you don't have access to children right now because of COVID, I apologize. I'm sorry because I miss the babies too. I miss hearing children's laughter outside. And I was like, they really weren't that annoying after all. You can't get a hold to it. Look at videos of kids, just being themselves and standing in their authenticity. That really taps into the heart of the soul and brings you back to yourself. So that's what I do for me. And I hope it works for you too.
Oh, I love that. Wow. Thank you so much again, Ninah. This was just a magical chat. So, can you tell our listeners how they can follow you on your adventures?
Yes, because I do have adventures. Follow me on Instagram at it's either self-loveology, there's a plus sign because anything that I want to add to, I'm putting the plus sign in. So I want to add myself to loveology. So it's self plus loveology or Ninah Davis, NINAHDAVIS on Instagram. I do answer my DMs. It may take me a day or two, but I do answer. And you can also find my website and an updated calendar at www.shakinahdavis.com. SHAKEINAHDAVIS.com. And I have a group for women or the divine feminine called self-loveology.life. And there's no plus sign there. It's just self-loveology.life because we're about that life. Okay. You can find me there. I can't wait to meet you and grow with you, my loves.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Magic Hour. We hope you enjoyed listening. Be sure to check out the show notes over at mylittlemagicshop.com for more information on today's guest, Ninah Davis. We hope to see you next Sunday. As always, sending you so much light, love, and magic. And remember, without a dream, you can't have a dream come true. So make sure that you're out there making your own damn magic.